Welcome to this video tutorial on postmodernism, late modernism, and we're also going to do a cheeky little bit of Marxist theory of postmodernity also. We're going to examine some key concepts. We're going to explore some key sociologists such as Foucault, Lyotard, Baudrillard, Giddens, Beck, Harvey and Jameson. We're going to make some synoptic links into year 1 and year 2. So rather than copying out and just making extensive notes from this tutorial, you have got a table that you can use. You can download it. If you want to just type on it, that's brilliant. If you want to copy it out, that's okay. You might want to make it big, or you might want to have your sociologist on their own page. So activity number 1, what I want you to do is to do a little bit of a spider diagram about what is modern society. Before we start to explore postmodernism and late modernism, we need to explore where have we come from, and that is a modern society. So pause this now, think about what is a modern society, try to picture it in your head. What does it look like? What are people's relationships like? What is the economy like? Where do people work? So pause that now and then join back in when you are ready. Okay, so you might have produced a little bit of a spider diagram that looks like this, and you can add any of this to yours if you want to. Now, early modern society was 16th, but modernity is generally agreed to coincide with the Industrial Revolution of the 17th century. There was this massive technological boom, there was an increase in industry, we've got lots of factories, we've got lots of internal migration, people are moving from rural areas to work in these factories. We started to see production lines, this Fordist economy, and it was the age of science, rationality and reason, and alongside this technology, science has become the dominant thinking or way of seeing the world, and it starts to replace the religious ideas of the past, and we now deal with objective facts, which is a feature of science, and we are measuring and we're quantifying the world, and we are doing this in order to improve society. We also saw the rise of compulsory education. So this was in 1880, and that was for the ages of 5 to 13. How do we know about the world? Well, individuals would have known about the world around them through this one-way media. It was through newspapers, and later on it was wireless or radios. And lastly, your identity was largely a national one. It was a homogeneous population. People just generally spoke the same language. They saw themselves in the same way. So your identity and your status was pretty much fixed in that way. And just to summarise, the structure of society was very fixed. There was security, so you got a job and it was a job for life. Your place in society, it was very, very stable. You knew who you were. You knew your place, basically, in a modern society. So as I previously mentioned, modern society was this glorious age of science, rationality and reason. And this research can be used to improve society. For example, our modern theories, for example, functionalist and Marxist, are part of this Enlightenment project. The idea through reason and rationality and science research, we can discover true knowledge, and this knowledge can be used to progress to a better society. Marx and Durkheim wanted to study society in order to improve or change it. So let's explore modern theories, or recap them if you've watched some of the other tutorials, and you're going to fill in your table to help you summarise it. So let's explore our two main modern theories. We've got functionalist and we've got Marxist. Now, functionalist, the main or the founding father is Emil Durkheim, and he was really interested in the functions of society and how the different institutions are working together to maintain society as a whole. He argued that there was this very strong collective conscience, people being bound together with shared norms and values. And this was developed later by Parsons with his organic analogy and this idea that there was this value consensus binding people together. On the other hand, we have got Marxist. This is the society that's based on this economic system of capitalism, the rational pursuit of profit, and it is maintained through ideology that benefits the ruling elite or the bourgeoisie. Okay, so rather than a consensus that everybody agrees on, it is through ideology. Now, they have quite a few things that are in common because they're writing about the same time. They both agree that the dominant family type is the nuclear family. And this fixed gender roles, dad going out to work, mum staying at home, the instrumental and expressive roles, if you're talking about it from a functionalist point of view, is perfect for this modern society. The education system, one size fits all, benefits everybody. You are socialising people into a shared culture, or you are socialising them into the roles that they're going to fit in within this capitalist system. They agree this idea of a nation state, and that the industry that we're talking about is this industrialised industry, this capitalist industry. They both agree that your status is fixed, that there's not much you can do to change it. A lot of it's fixed in terms of being ascribed, especially your class. If you were born working class, your dad was working class, the chances are you're going to be working class. And the reason why you know about the world is through this one-way media that I've mentioned before. Now, to evaluate, postmodernists would accuse the modern theories of being a meta-narrative. They're just looking at the world in a big, grand gesture way, and they're assuming and they're making lots of generalizations. And postmodernists would argue that society is more diverse than that. It's fragmented, and we can look at, for the family, it's diverse. There's lots of different family types now. The education system is no longer a one size fits all, and this idea of focusing on a fixed identity, postmodernists would argue that your identity is more fluid. You can change your status now. So I'm going to go back to your spider diagram that you did at the beginning, just to show how society has changed. So a postmodern society then, in that respect, is from the 1980s onwards. It's not a Fordist economy, it's more of a post-Fordist economy with flexible accumulation. No longer a national identity. If we're talking about the increase in migration, ease of travel, we have got international identities, transnational identities, or hybrid identities. We play with the media now in the fact that we don't just consume it, we're part of it. So you can use your phone and you can record the news and you can be there while it happens and you engage with it, and it's become more two-way. Education is now privatised, it's individualised. If you want to go to a sports college, you can do those types of things. And science and rationality and reason, yeah, that's brilliant, but we have got now a risk society. So overall, rather than a society that is fixed, stable, it is more fluid, it is fragmented, you've got lots more choice, and it's characterised by diversity. Now, a feature of postmodern society is this thing called globalization, and this is the growing interconnectedness of societies, or different countries are becoming a lot closer, and we have moved into this global world, and this massive social change has occurred for several reasons. Okay. So firstly, we've got technological changes. So we can travel the world very, very easily now. We've got cheap air travel, increase in migration, but also we can get information from across the globe very, very easily at a click of a button. We've also got economic changes. We've got this global economy, or this electronic economy, which means that we can do online banking and we can manage our money at any time. But likewise, we can be a consumer at any time as well, 24 hours a day. You want to buy something, you can click on online and it can arrive like next day, which is really impressive. We've also got political changes as well. So we have got things that fell within this time frame, so the fall of communism. But we've also got transnational companies which actually sometimes have more power than the nation state, really. There is more of economic power that of these transnational corporations. We have also got changes into culture and identity as well. Globalization has made it harder for a national identity now because of the increase in migration, the movement of people, but also this idea of the westernized media as well, which is pumping out images which are going to lots of different countries and spreading this idea of westernization, for example. But also you've got these transnational companies that we've got here which are selling products in multiple different countries which are pushing very similar tastes. So if you go to McDonald's, for example, or you buy Nike, you know what you're getting and you can buy it from different countries. So we are starting to see changes in that respect as well. So with postmodern theory, I thought it would be easier for me to give you the headlines. What are the main viewpoints in a sentence? And then we'll go into a little bit more detail on each. So the first one that we're going to look at is that the postmodern theories reject the modern theories and call them big stories that are no longer applicable to a diverse society that we live in today. The second viewpoint is that there is more than one truth. There's more than one way of looking at the world that is equally valid. And this is called a language game. And the third is that the media, that we are bombarded with media and these images that we're constantly being sent ends up distorting our reality. So let's explore them in a little bit more detail. So let's have a look at number one, reject the modern theories and call them meta-narratives. And this comes from this guy called Foucault. And he looks at the modern theories who are studying the world in an objective way, trying to measure it and come up with a theory. He rejects that. He rejects the idea that research and knowledge can improve society. So he also rejects the Enlightenment period. And he rejects these big theories of functionalist and Marxist who have a claim to the truth, and he calls them a meta-narrative. Instead, he takes this relativist position that they argue that all views are true for those that hold them. So whatever way that you look at the world, that is just as true as looking at the world in a different way. So to challenge the way that the big theories of functionalist and Marxist view the world is that they assume that the nuclear family is the only family type that is best suited for society. And a postmodernist would argue, well, no, that's not true, that social life is a little bit more diverse and there are other ways that are equally true for people. And we can look at the view about family diversity. There is no longer just one family type, there are a range of family types. And our postmodernist would be somebody like Robert and Rona Rappaport, who says that family diversity is central to understanding family life in society today with the 5 types of family diversity. Got a quick challenge for you. What are those 5 types? Yep, you're right. It's organisational, cultural, class diversity, life stage and generational diversity. Well done if you got all 5. And also Judith Stacey, in her study of a family, is that instead of being connected by marriage and having extended families through marriage, we have now extended families through divorce, where you have got connections through ex-wives, ex-husbands, ex-mother-in-laws and so on. Okay, our second one is that there is more than one truth. And this comes from another French sociologist or philosopher who did the postmodern condition, Lyotard. And he says there's multiple ways to see the world, and he calls these language games. And that there are competing truths rather than the generalizations of the meta-narratives who hold the monopoly of truth. And having these different ways to see the world allows marginalized groups to also have a voice. And these marginalized groups that have been marginalised by modern society tend to be ethnic minorities and women. So we start to see a diversity of views within postmodern society. And our final view is about the media images that distort reality. And this comes from Baudrillard. And he argues that the way that we view the world and the way that we acquire knowledge is in the form of signs and symbols, and he calls this simulacra. This creates a hyper-reality in which the signs, the way that we view the world, is more real than reality itself, and the media is distorting this reality. And this results us not having the power to improve society because we can't grasp the reality because we're powerless to change it. So just to explain what that means, because we've got some complex words there which are quite new, we're going to have a little bit of an activity. So let's have a look at what is a simulacra. Now, a simulacra is an image and a sign. So we're going to create our own simulacra. So you are real, and what I want you to do, using your phone, if you can, take a selfie. Now, what that means is you are real, your nature, you're the original. And now the selfie is a representation of you. Okay, so now we've got you, nature, and we've got representation, which is a copy. Now, can you distinguish the real from the representation? Okay, yeah, of course you can, because you can see the real that is there, because you can physically see you, and the representation might be on your mobile phone. Okay, now we can get a little bit more complex about this, because what we can do, you can upload that to Instagram, you can add filters and send it out to all your friends. Now they have a copy of your copy, and you can even commodify it, because you can become Instagram famous like Kylie Jenner. Okay, so it's becoming a little bit more complex. So this is what we mean by simulacra. Okay, we are living off these images that we're being bombarded with. Now this is where we start to see, or start to not know what is real or is fake, because you might know yourself the images that people put on Instagram might not reflect the reality. It's nice, smiley, there's filters on it, and it does distort the reality. Now we also can have copies of images where there is no original. It's not a representation of a real thing. Now I've got this from Shortcuts TV, who gave me some examples. Okay, so we've got the Wild West, we've got Downton Abbey, and I've added in The Only Way is Essex. And what we believe, the images that we see about the Wild West in particular, that does not bear any reality for what it was like living in America at that time. The images that we see about the Wild West are basically come from comic books, they come from films, and going to Disneyland, they've got a representation of what the Wild West is like, but it's actually not based on anything. It's not based on fact. Likewise, Downton Abbey can also be a representation of not an original, because there was no way the dynamics and the relationships between those upstairs and those downstairs would have ever existed. And it gives this rose-tinted view about what it was like to be in service in a grand house such as Downton Abbey, and that is not true either. So it's distorting our reality. And the same with The Only Way is Essex. Okay, we have got a reality TV show which is not really reality. There's a level of scripting that's going on there. Okay, so this creates a hyper reality, because we actually believe that these representations are more real than what the reality is itself, and we start to believe that they reflect this reality, and this blurs what is real and what is fake, and these mediated images are just reinforcing the idea of what it was actually like. Okay, so to evaluate, these are really valuable in highlighting the significance of the media, postmodernists, and the rejection of the meta-narratives. The meta-narratives just make generalizations, and postmodern society just highlights the diversity that there is. but it does ignore the power and inequality. Marxism, the images that are pumped out by the media can be seen as being tools of the ruling class to reproduce class inequality. And the point that we make about having a hyperreality where we can't distinguish between what's real and fake, I think we know that Tao is not real. So it just assumes that people can't distinguish between those. And the rejection of the Enlightenment period, that knowledge can be used to improve society, ignores the fact that research and knowledge can be used to influence political decisions that have been making improvements to people's lives. So that is our postmodern theory in a nutshell. Let's move on to late modern theory. So let's have a look at late modern theory, and I'll do the same again. I'll give you the headlines. So rather than being in a postmodern, we're in the latest stages of a modern theory where social change has happened, but it's become accelerated. A second point that we're going to look at is that we no longer interact with other people face to face. Things that we used to do face to face, we can do in a different way. And because of this, we need to reflect on our actions. We also live in a risk society, and there is greater individualisation. The first one we're going to look at is accelerated social change, and this comes from Anthony Giddens. So he argues that a feature of modernity continues to be present, and one of the features of modernity is social change, and one of the biggest social changes that we saw with the modern society was industrialisation and that type of social change. But in recent years, they have become intensified. So the social change that postmodernists talk about, globalisation, late modernists argue that's the latest stage of modernity, this accelerated social change, and it's become really intensified, this idea of globalisation. But Anthony Giddens also makes a second point, that he doesn't reject the Enlightenment period like postmodernists would do as well. He does believe that in a late modern society, they can discover objective knowledge to improve society. He also makes a second point, Anthony Giddens, we are no longer face to face and we need to be reflective. So this is this bit here. So high modernity has two key features that has encouraged globalisation and this rapid change that he's talked about. So because of globalisation, we have got this disembedding of culture, that we don't need to be face to face in order to interact. And this thing called disembedding has broken down geographical barriers, and this means that interaction is more impersonal. So in order to speak to somebody from Peru, you don't have to go physically to Peru. You can do that online. So we have disembedded that interaction. It has changed. Likewise, an example from beliefs in society, something else that has become disembedded is religion. You don't physically have to walk down the street and walk into a church to experience religion. You can view it online. You can do that without any face-to-face interaction, or it can be disembedded in another way, in that it can be relocated as well. Because of globalization, we can experience religion in different contexts. A second thing is reflexivity. So he also acknowledges, because of this rapid social change, traditions that are a feature of a modern society no longer guide our behaviour. We are forced to become more reflexive. That means that we modify our actions in light of new information that we are receiving all the time. We're constantly reevaluating our ideas, and because of this, our culture has become a little bit unstable. Now, this is a bit tough to get your head round. So just to give you a bit of an example, in a modern society, Saturday night, you're going out and you put your best dress on. Dead easy. You've got one dress and everybody's got one dress. if you're a girl, because obviously in a modern society we have got fixed gender roles. So girls are wearing the dress, the boys are wearing the suits, and you go out on a Saturday night and it's very easy because you put your best dress on and off you go. Whereas now, and I'm sure that a lot of you will be able to relate to this, you're going out with your friends on a Saturday night and the first thing is, oh, what am I wearing? What am I going to wear? So you then start to message all your friends, whether it's on WhatsApp or whatever, and you say, what you wearing? What you wearing? And we don't have that tradition anymore. We don't have that custom that you put your best dress on. You have now got lots of choices, and with that lots of choices becomes a lot of uncertainty. You don't want to run the risk of wearing the wrong thing. So what you do is you become reflexive and you check out everybody else, what you're wearing, what did we wear last time, or we can't wear that again, all that, and that is influencing our behaviour. And because of that, it's made us very, very uncertain and very unstable. Probably not the best analogy, but that sort of, I can relate to that one anyway. So the next one we'll look at is a risk society. So a key feature of today's society is risk. We're always calculating risk. Now, in the past, when society faced dangers, it was because of its inability to control nature. And now we have got manufactured risk because of the technology that we are using. And Beck calls these manufactured risks because they are resulting from technology and not nature. And one of the biggest risks that we face because of the manufacturing technology is global warming. And like Giddens, he also, and this is number 4, sees late modernity as a period of growing individualisation. And we're also becoming increasingly reflective, like what Giddens said, tradition no longer governs how we act. And as a result, we've got to think for ourselves and reflect on the possible consequences of our choice of actions. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of where we've come across individualisation before. So you may have remembered this from family and household. So Giddens talks about individualisation coming from the choice and equality, contraception and the independence of women, and that has led to greater individualisation. And in the past, family life was so controlled by external forces. There was law surrounding marriage, but there was traditions. So girls, you were expected when you were old enough to find a husband, and your roles were fixed. And that, in a way, even though it was very patriarchal, it was very, very easy. You knew what to expect. Whereas now, because of these changes, couples are more free to define their relationship through what they want, and it meets individuals' needs, and they're doing it that way. But the thing is, it does make it unstable, because once your needs are met, you have got that choice to leave if you want. And that is what he means by a pure relationship, a relationship that exists in order to satisfy the individual needs. But also, Beck talks about the individualisation thesis also, but he looks at it from a different angle because he talks about it from a risk society. So tradition has less influence, people have more choice. Likewise, in the past, nuclear family had the fixed roles, it was patriarchal, it was oppressive, but it was stable. Whereas now we have more choice and we have got a negotiated family, and this is more equal, but it is less stable because we're negotiating the roles, and if we're not satisfied, again, we can leave. And he calls families in this sense the zombie families. These families appear to be real, but in reality they are dead because they can't satisfy our needs in a risky society. Finally, to evaluate, they overemphasise the idea that we reflect on our actions and we are free to reshape our lives based on new knowledge. Structures such as your class, or whether you are in poverty or patriarchy, they all limit the choices that we make. And you might even refer to, if you link back to the individualization thesis. We've got Carol Smart, who talks about the connectedness thesis, that our choices are limited in regarding to family. However, the theories of late modernity do provide an alternative to postmodernism, and knowledge can be used to improve society. The Enlightenment period, which is something that postmodernists would reject. So that is our theories of late modernism. So our final part is Marxist theories of postmodernity. Now, you may have seen this in the Marxist PowerPoint or Marxist tutorial. Okay, so we're going to explore it again. If you've seen it before, it's just a perfect recap. And so we start to have a little bit of a look at what is happening within a capitalist economy, within a postmodern society. So let's start off with James Harvey, this thing called flexible accumulation. So in the 1970s, there was a crisis of capitalism. We started to see a decline in industry. We've got deindustrialization occurring. And part of that is because of globalization, which is a feature of postmodernism. Globalization has, and deregulation of industry, started to see factories and industries closed down in Britain but being moved elsewhere. So we still had the demand, but other countries could offer the sources a lot cheaper. So even though these factories did close, it did pave the way for companies to look for new ways to achieve profit. We no longer needed the Fordist style production line, where products like the Ford motor car was produced in one factory and distributed. We have now got a more complex post-Fordist economy. As well as this, we have also got small niche markets. Rather than having standardized products that are made for the mass market, if you think about those first Ford motor cars, they were all the same. They were all the same colour, very standardized. Whereas now, because of diversity and the features of a globalized world, we have got these niche markets as well, and these factories can switch production from one thing to another based on changes in supply and also demand as well. So as you will already identified, one of the functions of the family is to act as a unit of consumption, well, according to Marxists, and the constant switching of products encourages the shifts in fashion. But as a result of this, families are encouraged to keep up with the Joneses and keep buying products in order to meet the needs of capitalism. And the media bombard children with images which then in turn allow them to pester their parents in order to buy these goods. A second synoptic link is in education. So again, because of this constant switching of products, which encourages a shift in fashion, it means that we need an education system where we are producing flexible workers that are willing to be retrained and adaptable to keep up. And our final synoptic link is to crime. Because of these new or these businesses being able to shift their factories into different areas, they may even flout health and safety rules or exploit their workers because they're able to, and also it keeps costs low with that new style of capitalism. Finally, a final point, Harvey and Jameson argues that this has weakened the working class because we have got a diversity of cultures and diversity of views. We've got environmentalism, women's liberation, anti-racism, amongst other groups. This weakens the working class and socialist movement, meaning that we have not got that Marxist revolution is going to occur. We've got a divided working class. So just to evaluate the postmodern Marxism, postmodernism has led to a fragmentation of opposition groups. It abandons the ideas of a working class revolution. However, this theory of Marxism relates to the recent social changes to the nature of capitalism and offers some sociological explanation for which postmodernists on their own fail to do. So this video has reviewed modern, postmodern, late modern and Marxist theories of postmodernity. There's some resources and links to go along with it in the information below. Download the summary if you want it, and if you've got any questions, please comment. Click like, share it, and have an absolutely fantastic day. Bye.